Assalamualaikum and a very good morning. Once again, we'd like to express our gratitude to all in attendance today. And it's truly great to see the numbers present, especially on a Saturday morning, as I mentioned earlier, after a long week of working, and especially the ones who have also stayed up from Sahur this morning. I'm sure it's going to be a long day, but we are here for a great cause. We're all here looking to gain more knowledge and to improve our understanding on how we do our day-to-day practice in our profession. So we are also, not only that, we are here to learn from our mentor, whom I can't wait to introduce shortly. But before that, allow me to share a few housekeeping reminders. In case of an emergency, please use the nearest staircase and follow the exit signs. Obey all the instructions from the fire wardens and avoid using the lifts. Kindly switch your mobile phones to silent, or better yet, perhaps just to turn it off to ensure you have your full attention to our speakers today. If you are also feeling unwell, we encourage you to wear a face mask for courtesy to other participants. Please note that this event offers an open buffet for your convenience at ground level, if I'm not mistaken. Of course, for the Muslims, please don't go. And lastly, a gentle reminder for those who has not, please remember, as I highlighted earlier, please make sure you have scanned the QR code before coming in so that we'll have no disruptions throughout the event. Now, that's out of the way. I hope everyone is comfortable. I still see a few walking in, so please find your seats. And I hope everyone is ready as well. I would like to first and foremost invite Architect Elina Suhaida Abdul Rahman, Co-Chairman of the PAM Professional Practice Committee, to deliver her welcome remarks. Please welcome Architect Elina.
Thank you, Azim. Okay. This is always a bit too tall for me. Okay, to start with, to the ladies out there, Happy International Women's Day. To all women attending this event today, thank you for spending your Saturday morning instead of, we can't say celebrating, right? We can't, after Buka Puasa lah maybe. So, but you guys spend your time today in PAM Center, so thank you so much. Then we thank ETEX or PROMET for sponsoring the event, our speaker, Architect Chong Siong, our PAM Secretariat for organizing the event, our Master of Ceremony, Hazim, and everyone for coming in on Saturday morning. The event is a joint effort between PAM Professional Practice Committee and also CPD Committee. So PAM Professional Practice Committee has been working in a way quietly. We have been looking into the matters of practice, and we collaborate with others in order to announce what the works that we have been doing. I am Architect Elina Rahman, the co-chair for Subcommittee for Professional Practice Committee, the Fire Working Group. So today we will hear some of the updates on parts 7 and 8 of our UBBL Amendment 2021 from our esteemed Fire Guru, Architect Chong Siong. An update for the guide. Okay, so this is a bit sensitive. Don't throw bottles at me. So an update on the guide to fire protection in Malaysia, or what we known as the Red Book. An update lah. So it'll be out by end of this month. Firstly, on behalf of the committee, we thank you for your patience in receiving the book, but we have added 100 pages to qualify. We have added 100 pages from initially 350 pages to now 450 pages. It's full-colored. We did not add a single cent to you, so hopefully this will be worth it. So it is a collaborative work between Bomba, 18 PAM members. I think I've seen their faces here. Thank you so much. The engineers, ACM, and also IEM. So we are currently at final round. We are waiting for endorsement. So we will print out by end of next week. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Architect Elena, and don't worry, nobody's going to throw bottles at you. And thank you very much for your warm welcome remarks. And we are truly looking forward for the book as well. I think a much needed update on all the fire regulations that we have always been complying to in our practice. So we're really looking forward for this, and it's a great initiative put together by the team. So bravo, we look forward for it. Moving on, it's an honor for me to invite the President of PAM, Architect Adrianta Aziz, to take the stage and deliver a few words. Please welcome Architect Adrianta.
Okay. All right. Okay, don't worry. Whew. As architects, our creativity should not be restricted by regulations, but empowered by knowledge, allowing us to design with both vision and responsibility. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. Salam sejahtera. Selamat pagi. Good morning. Chosan. Kalabanakum. Salam Ramadan Mubarak. Right. Thank you, Architect Lina. You has announced to make an announcement about Red Books because I've been receiving a lot of messages asking about this book. Well, coming soon by end of this month, yeah? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this PAM Practice Talk CPD seminar on designing for fire safety, featuring our Sifu, Architect Chong Siong. Give a round of applause. Thank you, Siong. And of course, to our sponsor, Promat Architect, joining us today. Joanne, thank you, and your team. Well, this session is particularly timely and critical as we navigate the evolving landscape of fire safety regulations and their impact on architectural practice. That's why we can see in this room is always a full house when we're talking about fire prevention. In fact, at level 5 now, we have a part 3 workshop, and I believe I have shared last weekend about this UBBL to one of group of the young architects who want to take part 3. So very important to understand our statutory and our moral responsibility. So instead, a strong foundation in fire safety principles, ladies and gentlemen, allow us to integrate safety seamlessly into our design methodology, ensuring not just compliance, but truly resilient and become our responsible in architecture. Today's seminar will provide valuable insights into these updates and reinforce the fundamental principles of designing for fire safety. So I encourage all of you to engage actively, ask questions, please, and apply this knowledge to elevate the safety and resilience of our projects. So I leave it a quote of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Design creativity thrives when guided by knowledge, ensuring safety, resilience, and responsibility. With that, let us begin this important discussion. I wish you a productive seminar. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Architect Adrianta, for your energetic encouragement and to spark the audience attention this morning. Okay. But ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're all very much ready for the seminar. But first, before we proceed with the paper presentation, we would like to extend our gratitude to today's sponsor, eTex Malaysia, Sdn Bhd, for their generous support of this seminar. Please welcome Mr. Sean Lee, Technical Sales Manager for Promat Southeast Asia Market, for a short presentation. Please welcome Mr. Sean Lee.
morning, everyone. My name is Sean. So it's quite happy and to see all the passionate, expert, professional coming here, joining the this talk by the AR Chong regarding the UBBL on the Saturday morning. So not to waste too much on the time, let's go into the presentation. I hope our short sharing today will complement to what AR Chong to be shared later on regarding the UBBL. So first of all, my name is Sean. Basically, I'm the technical sales manager for the Southeast Asian market. And today the flow, it will be a short briefing on the what eTax is doing and what is ProMat. And then later on, we will jump into our product offering in terms of the passive fire protection, in terms starting from the structural steel, then compartmentation, fire stopping, and finally on the MVP. It's just a short while just to give you a high level on what overview, what we can provide. And a nutshell on the eTax and also for the ProMat. Basically, eTax, ProMat, they are the same. eTax is the company name, whereas the ProMat is our branding. So ProMat is basically focused in the passive fire protection and also for the high performance insulation. eTax, we are a Belgian company, HQ in Belgium. Then we have about 13,500 employees and operating in more than 45 countries with the manufacturing site more than 160. So depending on what kind of material, what kind of technology we are sourcing globally. So ProMat, we are the expert in the passive fire protection. We basically has the most comprehensive portfolio in terms of the passive fire protection solutions from structurals, compartmentation, fire stopping, and also for the M&E enclosure. Then, yeah, why passive fire protection matters? So, it basically, we are not just a businessman. I mean, businessman is just the basic, but what drives us is the passion about the fire safety. So, we want everyone to be safe. We want our family, friends, those that people, when they visit to any part of the buildings, they are safe. So we provide our solutions, safeguarding people and also the asset to prevent from the fire damage. And just like all the experts like you, we will never compromise on the fire safety. So a quick one on just an overview on what we are able to provide. Structurals. Nowadays, steel structure is getting more and more common. We provide protection to the structures, to the concrete, and to the timber as well, although not so much in Malaysia. Then compartmentation, very simple, fire rated partition, ceiling, and flooring not so much, but also on the vertical fire barriers, horizontal fire barriers. Then fire stopping, all those services that passing through the compartments. Then we also need to treat all these big points because when services passing through, it leaves a gap, holes, and so on. So we also need to look into it. If not, then it will compromise. Fire can easily spread through. And of course, M&E enclosure, ducting, cables, and so on. So a quick one on the structural protection. So when it comes to structural steel protection, we have different technology, different protection method from intumescent paint to the vermiculite spray and also to the board encasement. So each of these come with their own pros and cons, depending the project requirement, what is required, then we will propose accordingly. So a quick one, intumescent paint basically is up to 3 hours fire rating. Then it has the most aesthetic one, it's thin, is easy to apply. Then vermiculite basically is the most economical options, but it's ideal for the large area, but the surface is a bit texture. So if you have time later on, you can visit to our booth outside, then you can have a difference between the board encasement, the vermiculite spray, and also with the intumescent paint. So in terms of the board encasement, it requires the less skilled worker because the board is already pre-manufactured. It comes with the uniform thickness. You can just cut, clad, and in terms of decoration, it can perfect match with the adjacent material. So these is just some of the project reference. The first one is the board encasement. It looks like a timber, but actually it's a structural steel with board encasement clad with our custom silicate board, and the ID, they just do a timber decorative finishing on top. So it looks like timber. And the second is on the vermiculite spray. It looks good from far, but the surface is quite rough. So if you have a chance, you can see it later on at the outside at our booth. And normally it goes for large area, industrial building, and you will require a false ceiling or ID box up to cover up the rough surface. And the last would be the far right, would be the intumescent paint. It basically, it maintains the steel look. So for those like where aesthetic is critical, where you need to maintain the steel look, then intumescent paint is the preference options. So Transpace in Singapore, already shared just now. So this is one of the project reference for the vermiculite spray. It's spray being over the truss and the bond deck. And this is for the intumescent paint. So normally goes for the where aesthetic is critical and where sometimes if the steel is exposed for the outdoor application for external, then we can also use intumescent with the top coat protection. So come into the compartmentation format, we basically offer vertical, horizontal separation. So vertical compartmentation, horizontal compartmentation, and also for the cavity barrier as well. In terms of the horizontal separation for this vertical compartmentation, we have different type of design. So depending what is the project requirement, what is the needs, then we propose accordingly. From very general, which is very common, steel stud partition, where we build a steel stud framing, put in the mineral wood infill, and clad with the fire protective board on both sides. So it's a symmetrical design where you protect the fire from both sides. The fire protection rating is up to 4 hours. Then other than that, we also have the solid partition, where it's a slim design, and when you require for one side installation. So by having 50 mm thick, it can fulfill 2 hours integrity and also insulation criteria. So it's much more slimmer comparing to the common steel stud partition. And of course, we have this high performance Durasteel fire and blast wall. It comes with 4 hours fire rating, up to 4 hours. And at the same time, it also provides blast resistance as well, up to 2 bar. So those like critical area where you want to protect the critical infrastructures, equipment, and so on, then yeah, this is basically the requirement, the preference for that. So Nirvana for the lift lobby with the steel stud partition. So basically it's just a steel stud and then with the mineral infill, then clad with the fire protective board and solid partitions. So you can see how narrow is the space where you can only install from one side. So this one is actually for 1 hour fire rating. So with 35 mm, you can achieve for 1 hour, 50 for 2 hours, and 75 for 4 hours. Also with these high performance Durasteel barriers. So this is actually in the track of the underground MRT in Singapore. So what they want to do is demountable. So when there is a service maintenance, then they can bring the big machinery to the underground, then they need to remove this wall. So Durasteel demountable wall panel. We also propose this for the RTS as well. So basically it's an ongoing installation over there. Of course, I'm not sure if there's any GTP architect here. Thanks for the support. So this is actually the vertical fire barrier for the GTP campus. The previous this one basically is to tackle the bylaw 149 for the fire barrier along the building perimeters. Then when come to this horizontal compartmentation, we also have various design from very common suspended ceiling where you need to have the suspended framing that fixed to the soffit or fixed to the structural beams. Then normally this design is fire from to protect the fire from below. It's an asymmetrical design, but it's ideal for the large area where you have a large ceiling area because there is no limitation on the ceiling span. Then we also have another system called self-supporting ceiling. It by itself is self-supported. So normally it's when you have a big tall floor ceiling height, then you want to subdivide to fire protect the fire from above and below. So normally when the services passing through, then you want to protect it, for example, in the lobby, then yeah, this is the ideal solution where it fixed from wall to wall. So of course, the last one, Durasteel fire and blast sealing, is basically high impact, blast resistant, and also with an exceptional fire resistant for that. So some of the example, where there's a lot of services on top, then we are building this self-supporting ceiling to protect it. Then also some of the niche application for the escalator pit, where escalator machine, you have a big floor opening, we can build an enclosure to protect, to maintain the fire integrity as well. So for Durasteel, it can be used for external. So this is just a vertical separation between the genset in Singapore. So it comes to the fire stopping part. So fire stopping, although not so much relevant to architect, but also part of the scope in terms of passive. So I will touch a bit on that. Depending on what kind of services, whether it's a cable, type of the cables, what type of pipes, type pipe material, whether it's metal, it's plastic, type of the plastic, all this we have a different solution, different treatment for that. So for linear joints, for the penetration seals, and so on. So depending on the requirements, whether you want a permanent fix or temporary fix. And I would like to take some time to share on this IMC box. Is for the cable penetrations, but normally the traditional way is like you need to remove the fire stopping in order for you to add or remove cable to do the retrofitting. But with this system, actually you no need to remove the fire stopping, and you can just add or remove the cable. It comes with a pie sleeve, and inside there's a flaps where you can insert or remove the cables. If you are interested, we also have one sample out there. You can have a look on that. And other than that, also for this IM grill, it's actually a ventilation grill. Normally we install it at the fire-rated wall. As we know, normally fire-rated wall is opaque. It shouldn't have any opening, or if required, then it's kind of like a damper. But in this case, we have this system where you can install between the firewall while it allows the natural air ventilation. So at the ambient, the air can pass through, but when there's a fire, this black thing intumescent, it will expand, and then it will close up the opening, and it can fulfill 2 hours integrity and insulation. So the last part would be on the MEP, I mean M&E protection enclosure. So same, we have different type of the design. Either we clad to the steel duct, or we build the duct itself without any steel liner, just with our fire protective board. The general one is very simple, where you already have a steel duct, we build the framing, we put in the mineral wool, and we clad it with the fire protective board. And yeah, just one of the reference in Bangsa BSc. Then also we have this self-supporting duct, where we build the duct itself without any steel liner. And they are up to 4 hours REI, stability, integrity, also insulation. Of course, when it comes to a critical service, some of the services when you need to protect, to maintain the fire compartment, we have that solution as well. For example, for cable enclosure, for 1.8, for Dexcom, this is the project reference. And yeah, for PayNet, a Durasteel cable enclosure. And it comes to the last part of my sharing. Basically, I mean, why choose Promet? Promet, we basically is, I mean, we in the market for quite some time. We have 60 years of experience. And of course, we provide a one-stop solution. We have the full range of the passive fire protection solutions. And of course, all behind this is supported by the rigorous fire test. Rest assured, all our offering is with the BOMPA approvals. So we are able to sign off the C1. It's not like something that plucked from the sky, simply just proposed for you. We are serious in terms of the design and proposal. And yep, thank you for your time and attention. That's all for my short sharing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sean Lee, for your informative talk. So I'm pretty sure everybody can have a chance to look at their products outside, as you even walked in earlier, but have some time to do that right after our presentation today. We will now proceed with the paper presentation, but first, please allow me to read out a brief biography of our invited speaker today. Architect Chong Siong holds a Bachelor of Arts in Architecture and a Bachelor in Architecture Honours from Deakin University. He served as a council member of Pertubuhan Architect Malaysia, PAM, holding key roles such as honorary secretary in the year 2006 to 2007, and vice president from 2007 and 2008, and contributed to various committees, including CPD and building standards. An expert in fire safety engineering, he played a role in drafting the Uniform Building Bylaws 2012 and co-authored the Guide to Fire Protection in Malaysia. He has lectured at multiple universities and examined architecture program. His firm, LSA Architects, Sendram Berhad, established in 1994, specializes in residential, commercial, and high-tech industrial projects. Today, we have the privilege to embrace the paper presentation by architect Chong Siong, titled Designing for Fire Safety, Revisions in the Uniform Building Bylaws, 1984, Amendment 2021. Without any further ado, please join me in welcoming architect Chong Siong. Round of applause, everyone.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. I'll be using this mic, huh? Yeah. Okay, thank you. No, I think it should be all right. All right. Thank you and good morning. And I apologize. I've actually changed the title of the talk today. Okay, what's happened is that the original title that I'm meant to deliver is supposed to be on the revisions in the UBBL 2021, highlighting it. But I'm sure some of you may have already gone through a few of my previous sessions on the same topic, revisions on the Uniform Building Bylaws 2021, and we realized that 2 hours is not enough. If I'm to go through it, sometimes it takes up 3 days or 4 days, and we'll never ever finish. And if I give an introduction, you'll just raise more questions, and then I won't be able to go home after that because we'll all be crowding around and having an after-seminar session. We are very thankful to eText and ProMat this morning because it is with their generous sponsorship that we are allowed to have this session this morning. And eText and ProMat, they are, obviously, as you've seen from the introduction, they are manufacturers of passive fire protection systems. Everything from fireboards to fire stops and all these things. So I thought, just at the spur of the moment this morning, I thought, hey, since the Red Book, as announced by Alina, would be published by the end of this month, why don't we all just wait for the Red Book? Take a break for 2 or 3 weeks when the Red Book is out. There are 450 pages in this revised Red Book. Actually, the title is called The Guide to Fire Protection in Malaysia, 3rd edition. The Red Book is just a moniker. There are 450 pages. So if you pace yourself, you read 40 pages a day, every night before you go to bed, you'll finish it in 100 days. Anyway, so I just thought that we are so close already. For the past 3 years, I've been talking about the revisions of the UBL 2021 over and over and over and over again. Everything that I've got in all my seminars all these years would be in the Red Book. It's a combination. It's not my own. We got Chi Su Ting, we've got, of course, myself. We've got 18 other architects from PAM who's contributed laboriously to the production of the Red Book, in terms of not even just in terms of the drafting, but in terms of the graphics. You'll be surprised. We want to surprise you. When you get the Red Book, look at the graphics. We've improved it tremendously. Architects, we are designers, and we do best in graphics and in illustrations and all these things, especially on buildings. So the Red Book, I would want to proudly say, is a culmination of the best of what architects can do, right? So wait for that. So I will not give you any more spoilers. I thought for the 2 hours that we have this morning, I will want to focus on 2 items. This morning would be on passive fire stops, right? And then after our tea break, I'll have to give you another PowerPoint later. I'm sorry because it's so last minute. After the tea break, I would want to be sharing with you applications of drywall construction for passive fire containment. right? Because Bomba has its, okay, I'll tell you the background on that a bit later. That will be after the session. Now, so my apologies if you're expecting an overview of the UBBL 2021. We are now just focusing on 2 items, right? On passive fire stops and on the drywall applications for fire compartmentation. Okay, let's get started. So tailoring passive fire stops to complexities of modern buildings. Very, very quickly, okay, we all know the Uniform Building Bylaws is a prescriptive building code. Okay, all of these are the base introduction. And the Uniform Building Bylaws have now, for the purposes of going on a more of a performance specification, as opposed to a prescriptive code, a lot of the clauses in the UBBL has now been turned from being prescriptive to making references to standards. Right, for example, smoke control. For example, doors, fire doors. We used to have the entire clause describing how you construct a fire door. You take 2-inch plywood, you whack it in there, stuff it with the sandboard or whatever. You can't have a uniform building bylaw giving you such prescriptions on how to construct a fire door. Right, of course, we got now MS 1703 for the longest time already. So the Uniform Building Bylaws now, when it comes to fire doors, it just refers to MS 1703. Right, okay, that is a shift. Yeah, the bylaws should remain just a law. It should not be a construction manual, or worse, it should not be a design manual for architects on how to design your buildings. It is just that. It is a bylaw. And that's where the Red Book comes in. The Red Book becomes a guide to the interpretations of the bylaws to assist us in our design. Right? So, so standards are becoming very prominent because the bylaws will be referring to standards now. So while the bylaw is a prescriptive building code, the standard is descriptive. It provides informative descriptions, it establishes normative practices, and most importantly, it describes the performance criteria expected of a standard. So fire stops. As what Sean Lee had mentioned just now, when it comes to fire stop, he said that, okay, fire stops probably will not apply to architects so much or doesn't concern the architect so much. All right, now I will have to disagree with him entirely 100%. All right, because yes, that is very true. When was the last time you actually signed off a C form for fire stops? Probably not. All right, very, very few. But say fire stops, passive fire stop, as the word implies, is passive. So architects, we are responsible for all the passive systems in passive fire stopping systems, passive systems that contribute to fire safety in a building. The engineers, they will be signing off the C forms on the active system, the hydraulics, the pumps, the mechanics, the alarm panels, and all those things. But honestly, I have not actually seen a mechanical engineer signing off a C form on a fire stop. Because in their specifications, when they specify the cables and all that, when it goes through a wall, they say, okay, it's to be fire stop. But that item is usually in a gray area. Right? If the mechanical consultant specified, put in a fire stop, he probably wouldn't have specified what kind of a fire stop. So we are really, really leaving it to the contractor. But you're not leaving it to the main building contractor. Why? Because the main building contractor say, oh, that one is mentioned in the nominated subcontractors package, in the air conditioning package, for example, or in the electrical package. So the electrical contractor, he comes along, he sees the wall, and the drawings show a hole through the wall that he's supposed to pull the wire through. He either asks the main contractor to whack the hole, or he looks at it, he says, main contractor cannot be found, he whacks the hole. So he drags in the cables across, and that's it. Then at the end of the day, probably the hole will remain a hole. Right? Very, very likely. Right? On the worst case scenario, at the very, very last minute, someone comes along, the architect probably, he comes along, he looks at, why is there a hole in my firewall? Contractor, fix it. And contractor, okay, what does he do? He gets the nearest guy with a with a bucket of cement and plaster, and you say, fill it up. And it does. So that's exactly what happens. Right? So you get cement, sand, plaster, fill up on all the holes, and that's it. What I don't see, what I do not know will not hurt me. Yeah, and when Bomba comes in here, he looks at all the C-forms. C-forms for fire stops will be absent. Doesn't matter because there are no fire stops. There are no specified fire stops applied anyway, so there are no C-forms to sign. Everyone goes off happy. What you don't know what it is. All right, so today I want to inform you that it is the architect's responsibility for all passive fire safety, including fire stops. I will be going through first on the interpretations of the bylaw as to what are the references to fire stops in our uniform building bylaws and in our standards. And then I'll be showing you an illustration, a simple example of a project that I myself have gone through and how we apply, or how we as architects will design, specify, and supervise the physical construction of fire stops. All right, so let's just get through it. So in the Uniform Building Bylaws, Bylaw 133, fire stop means a barrier or seal which would prevent or retard the passage of smoke or flame within the cavity or around a pipe or duct where it passes through the wall or floor at the junction between elements of structure. This is verbatim from the UBBL, so you don't have to take a photograph. It is actually just a verbatim extraction of the clause on the fire stop. Okay, where is a fire stop required? Well, that's quite obvious. UBBL 141, talk about separating walls. No opening shall be made in any separating wall which forms a complete vertical wall separating any building. So separating walls. So generally, no opening shall be formed in a separating wall, right? But however, the passage through a separating wall, okay, nothing in this bylaw says that you cannot actually have anything going through a separating wall. It just says that it shall have no opening because a separating wall, by inference, is an element of structure, so it does require fire rating for the prevention of a fire spread from wall to wall, right? But however, it does allow passages of things to go through the wall. So on the basis of the prescriptive code, it says you are not allowed to have a flue pipe going through a separating wall. But if you have anything going through a separating wall, say a pipe, for example, if the pipe is made of combustible material, that pipe that's going through shall not be larger than 25 millimeter diameter. So the intention is that if you have a PVC pipe going through a wall, if you keep it at 25 mm, when the fire occurs, if it burns, hopefully the 25 mm hole that is left behind will not cause too much damage. And maybe an inference that the PVC pipe will probably melt and help to seal up the gap. Of course, but this is purely prescription. That's really what the bylaw is. The bylaw is just a prescription. It's not performance-based. It is just like, okay, let's just set some certain limitations. Yeah? Or, if your pipe is non-combustible, made of, say, cast iron or something that's non-combustible, practically, aluminium is also considered non-combustible, but we all know now aluminium has got a very low melting point. So it may be non-combustible, but when it melts, you still got a gapping hole in the wall, right? So if the material is non-combustible, you can go up to 150 millimeters diameter, no more than that. And between the outer surface of the pipe and the opening, it has to be fire stopped. Right, so that would be the first reference now as to where you require fire stop is in the UBBL. Now, an opening in a separating wall which is necessary by means of escape for fire, say a door, obviously then you have to install a door. Right, and the door shall be of an FRP of not less than that required of the wall. Okay, this is another point. Many people have been saying, oh, if I install a door in a 2-hour fire rated wall, I can go for half rating on the wall, right? Many people are nodding their heads. Only on one application, which I'll come to it later. the general thing is this. If you need a 2-hour wall to give you a 2-hour fire rating, obviously every part of the wall must have a 2-hour fire rating. So if you have a door, you put a door leaf in that wall, then obviously the door leaf must be of the same integrity as the wall that you're going through. So that has to be the basis. So take away that half fire rating thingy for door for now. Just take it away. That one comes in only for certain applications, which I will mention later. Right? So it is always full fire rating or fully in compliance with the integrity that's expected of the wall. Okay, then still, where is fire stop required? Now we have compartment floors and compartment walls. Just now was separating wall. I do have another session on the definition of what's the difference between party wall, compartment wall, separating wall. Okay, but that's another session. That one will be. But for now, it's separating wall, now compartment walls. These are all references direct to the UBBL. No opening shall be made in any compartment wall or compartment floor with the exception of any one or more of the following. An opening for ventilation duct, other than the duct consisting of a protected shaft. If any space surrounding the duct is fire stop and the duct is fitted with an automatic fire damper. Right? And again, the fire damper or whatever assembly it is that's going through the wall shall have not less than the required FRP. Shall have not less than the required FRP of that wall that you're going through. Right? That means any opening going through the wall shall not in any way diminish the integrity of the wall. And where a compartment wall forms a junction, etc., then it needs to be fire stop. In other words, a compartment wall or floor shall function fully as a compartment. Any openings, any sleeves or any pipes or anything that you're penetrating through shall not be a reason for the wall to have a lesser integrity. Right? Okay, so that is the key criteria of a fire stop. UBBL 161. So we do actually have got a specific clause in the UBBL talking about fire stops. And this is where it is. 161. Any fire stop required by the provisions of this part shall be so formed and positioned as to prevent or retard the passage of flame. That is verbatim. And any fire stop shall, it says any fire stop shall, if provided around a pipe or duct in a cavity, be made of a non-combustible material. Obviously, it has to be non-combustible. Okay. But this is prescriptive code speaking here. If the wall is constructed, or if the floor or wall constructed of the combustible material, then of timber not less than 37 millimeters thick. Again, as I mentioned, the UBBL is a prescriptive code. And a lot of these things are carried over from the very, very old British ordinances that we have. So really, even in today, this kind of a description no longer apply because we should not be prescribing the thickness of the timber for the purposes of fire stop anymore. Right? So nowadays, we should just go for performance-based approach, or just refer to the relevant standards. And if provided around a pipe or duct to be so constructed so as not to restrict the essential thermal movement. Okay, so this is one element here now. Under UBBL 161, or in the clauses on separating wall and compartment wall, we mentioned a fire stop is something that is supposed to keep the integrity of the wall. If the wall is 2-hour rating, the fire stop must give you that integrity. So here, under UBBL 161, of course it says the integrity of the wall again, but on item B, the fire stop is not to restrict essential thermal movement. Here it only mentioned thermal movement, but by inference it's also, I would say, it is not to restrict mechanical movement. In other words, vibration, water hammering of your pipes, or even flexing of the pipes, right? But in this case, it shall not restrict essential thermal movement. And by inference, physical movement. So, any fire stop formed as a seal at the junction or two or more elements of structure shall be made of non-combustible materials. Again, it's prescriptive code. Of course, it's understood that it has to be of a non-combustible material. And any cavity in an element of structure which is continuous through the whole or part of such element and has a surface of combustible material exposed to the cavity lower than class O shall be fire stopped. This little clause over here is probably a little bit redundant now because all of these references are now superseded or taken over by all references to BS 8414. When we have cladding, when we have cavity on the external walls and all that, the standards of BS 8414 in a way overrides this already. But this one will still be applicable if you're doing a building that does not necessarily need to be in compliance with BS 8414. Now, this is an element that would still be applicable, right? Fire stopping in cavities, in elements of structure. Right, so all these are the prescriptions. And again, any junctions forming the compartment shall be fire stopped, similarly. Diagrammatically speaking, this is how we summarize it. If the green elements are the elements of structure that requires fire stopping, if you have a combustible pipe going through, maximum is 25 millimeters diameter. And if you have if you have a non-combustible pipe going through, maximum diameter shall be 150 millimeters. And between the outer surface and the inner surface of the opening, you shall be fire stopped. Right? That means there shall be no air gaps going through. So in this case, what we are saying is that we are relying entirely on the integrity of the pipe going through to prevent the fire from going through the cavity of the pipe. Right? In the case of the combustible one, you're hoping that 25 mm, if a cavity does occur, 25 mm should not cause too much trouble. And in the case of a non-combustible pipe, you think that it should be able to last in a fire for the duration that you require it without melting or breaking down. Now, what if you have a duct? If you have a duct going through, then we need to have the fire stopping on the automatic dampers, or I've just noticed there's the grill. They've got the grill that got the intermittent grill. I do not know how we can apply that one yet in terms of its performance and criteria, but it's definitely an interesting element. Because again, fire dampers are specified by our engineers, you see. So we almost have no control. When was the last time we actually asked the engineer, what is the fire rating of the fire damper that is specified on that particular duct? I don't think we have. Well, I haven't. All right. So now we really have to, Mr. Engineer, please, we have to talk. Now, another way of, again, when we have fire dampers on an air duct, it means that in the event of a fire, we have to be stopping the function of this duct. Right? If this air, of course, if it's HVAC, normal air conditioning, in the event of a fire, the first thing to turn off will be the HVAC anyway. So you can, of course, have all these fire dampers closing off the ducts. But what if this duct happens to be actually your smoke extraction? The last thing you want is for the smoke extraction duct to have the dampers closing. Then you've lost a very critical element of fire safety. So if the duct has to be fully functional at all times, then you can't use dampers. You'll then have to do a full enclosure of the duct over the entire length, fire rating it. Right? So then you can remove the dampers and you have a full fire rating. And again, ProMat has got a full complement of materials for you to do this kind of specifications. Right. So another example, this is for vertical penetration, or rather penetration through horizontal elements. Again, exactly the same thing. The same thing applies. And if you turn this into a shaft, or you turn it into a ducted riser where you put a door in there, now this is where the half required FRP comes in. See, the elements of structure, the bylaw is prescriptive, it's very, very clear. Once FRP is prescribed for your building in accordance to a size and volume and function and purpose group, it's to be applied to all elements of structure. So all elements of structure is, of course, all your structures, floors, walls, columns, compartment walls, compartment floors, everything that's regarded as an element of structure in the bylaw in the description. But however, where it is not an element of structure, but you require it for fire rating, particularly in a sense like this, you may, it's not that you must, you may have the FRP reduced to half, and in any case, no less than half an hour lah. Yeah? So if it's a 1 hour wall, you don't reduce it to less than half an hour. Right? But I'll come to that a bit later. But generally, the purpose of this is this. This element, I'm supposed to point it at the screen down there. Okay, so this element is not an element of structure, but you are putting it there because you're demarcating. I'm not too sure, am I supposed to point it there or there? Okay. Okay. So that element, okay, fingers work better. All right. So that element is not an element of structure, but it is an element that you put in because you do require or you do desire to have a compartmentation of a firewall. Maybe on this, in this shaft over here, say it's an electrical shaft, you are putting the main distribution board over there, and you do want that fire protection of the main distribution board. So you put in that wall. So that wall may be then half, it may be half of the required rating specified of the building. Okay, let's see what else I got here. Okay, so another illustration. So you got the duct going through between the walls. So you can then of course have the fire dampers on this one. And the fire dampers may be half of the required FRP. And likewise, if I actually have a door into this protected shaft, that door may be half the required FRP. Right, the reasoning is quite simple. Generally, the green elements are the elements of structure. So that's already prescribed. We will not want to differentiate it. If it says 2 hours, all the green elements will be 2 hours. However, if you put in a door in a protected shaft, the bylaw never says you shall then have a FRP of a door, half of that of a structure. No, the bylaw says you may. Right? The reasoning being that if you have a 2 hour structure like this, and this is a protected shaft, should there be a fire occurring, say, on that lower compartment, you want to stop that fire from spreading into the upper compartment, you're asking for, say, a 2 hour fire rating. Here, 1 hour fire rating to burn through that door. The fire enters the compartment. It probably take another hour to burn through the other door above. Okay, that is the rationale. But that is why the bylaw never say you shall. It says you may. You want to save a few ringgit, you may. You may have a door half the fire rating. And this one applies to also protected corridors. It applies to protected stairs, story exits, and all this. Right? You may. I'll let you in on something that I do in my office. I never bother to specify half ratings for fire doors. Why? Because first, our guys, I don't physically do the specifications and the door schedules anymore, I cannot trust my own guys anyway to actually be able to identify which are the doors that are going through a protected shaft and which are the doors that are supposed to be going through compartments, number one. Secondly, I will definitely not have the time to be able to sift through all of this. Yeah? And then at the end of the day, you ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I trying to save the, no developers here, I don't have any clients here, right? Am I trying to save the developer a few ringgit by going through the trouble of finding exactly where I can have half a fire rating on the doors? Don't bother. All right? Just to ensure that everything goes in and that there's no mistake on construction. First, there's no mistake on your schedules, there's no mistake on your specifications. And then the contractors on the site, they don't install the wrong door in the wrong situation, you see. So just specify all doors to the required fire rating. That's just my my advice. I don't take my word for it, but that's just my advice, okay? Because the bylaw never says you shall. It says if you want to save a few ringgit, you may. All right? So this is the application. All right, so coming back to fire stops, what are the properties required of a fire stop? Again, we go prescription first. Okay, sorry, we went through the prescription already. So what does the prescription say? Most of it generalizes in saying the material has to be non-combustible, obviously. Secondly, it has to be of the same integrity. It must provide the same fire integrity as the element that you're going through, right? And then the third one is in UBBL 161, it shall not restrict thermal movement. And by that also we imply it shall not restrict physical movement or mechanical movement. So now we refer to the standards, MS 1183. See, products and materials for fire stopping. The selection of products and materials used for fire stopping should take into account the size and nature of the gap and any anticipated differential movement. Now we are talking. All right, this is Malaysian standards here. And proprietary fire stopping and sealing systems, including those designed for surface penetrations, are available and may be used in a way that they achieve the appropriate level of fire resistance when tested in accordance to BS 47622 or BS EN 1634-1. In case where minimum differential movement is anticipated and where the gap does not exceed 25 mm, the following fire stopping materials may be used without specific test evidence. So this is again some prescription. This is the Malaysian MS 1183. Right? So it does give some reference back to the UBBL on prescription or what is deemed to comply, so that you don't always have to have your material specified and send it for testing or buy proprietary materials, okay? So there are some deemed to comply methods of fire stopping. So here is that where differential movement is absolutely minimum and where the gap does not exceed 25 mm, okay, you may refer to back to the UBBL for what is deemed to comply. And these are it. Cement mortar, gypsum-based plaster, cement or gypsum-based vermiculite or perlite mixes. So these are deemed to comply. You don't have to submit C forms for this. They're deemed to comply. And I think this is what we've always been using. Not even item C, I think mostly A. In many cases, B. Yeah, because when the contractor is plastering, the plastering guy ends up being your fire stop fella. the Indonesian, they just came by boat the night before. That guy plastering a wall is your fire stop installer. Okay, that's a reality. That's a reality of what's happening. So if it's non-combustible and deemed to comply, only these three elements. Then, continuing, to maintain the physical integrity of fire stopping, it should be reinforced with or supported by non-combustible materials or materials of limited combustibility in the following circumstances. In cases where the gap between elements is greater than 100 mm. And in any other case where non-rigid or flexible materials are used, i.e. where you need to account for differential movement, thermal movement or mechanical movement, right? Then you will need some kind of a reinforcement on the fire stopping. So again, these are standards without being too specific. Yeah, I've said that already. Okay, but what are the specific properties required of a fire stop? Okay, we've gone through the UBBL and also we've gone through the mention in the MS 1163. So, to summarize, properties required for fire stops. The three elements that are deemed to comply: cement mortar, gypsum-based plaster, and cement or gypsum-based vermiculite perlite mixers. Are these materials, now this is the question we're posing to ourselves, are these materials in according to the UBBL and MS 1183? We will say yes. Are these materials non-combustible? Before we answer, then now we have to define what in the world is non-combustible. It is important because these are all laws and standards, so we must know the exact definition. So in the UBBL, it talks about non-combustible. If it's non-combustible, deemed to comply. So what is non-combustible? So BS 476, fire test on building materials, part 4, non-combustibility test for materials. These are the tests for determining non-combustibility. In this case, it's part 4. So part 4 is a very simple test. Okay, just a note also, BS 476 is kind of ancient. It's survived for, I think, 50 over years already. It has been the backbone of a lot of our specification for fire-related materials in terms of combustibility, fire stops, integrity, stability, insulation, and all that. But however, BS standards at that time when it was configured, the testing samples are all very small. So the results of the standards, of course, they comply if you work it in accordance to how it's specified. But I would say the tests are now very limited. In Europe, it's really going to be replaced by EN. I can't remember the code now. But BS 476 is really being replaced already with new European Union, new EN standards. But anyway, just to show you some examples. For example, 476, fire testing on materials, part 4, non-combustibility. You have two samples. One sample is we call it the base sample, and the other one is a sample that you're trying to test. So they're just checking on the differentiation between the base the inert sample as compared to the sample you're testing. They're measuring the flammability, they're measuring the temperature, and that's it, really. So it's almost as if you're taking one material that you know as a base is non-combustible, say a piece of stone, and then you want to test this piece of paper. You light both of them up, paper burns, wow, that's burning, that one's not burning, okay, that's non-combustible, this is combustible. That's really it, okay? Now, of course, the threshold, they do have a lot of formulas by measuring the temperature, measuring the rate of the flames, etc., etc. Then they will determine. So are these materials non-combustible? Because it's already prescribed in our, if you look into the 7 schedule, yeah, it's already in the UBBL anyway. Okay, so are these materials non-combustible? Yep, they are non-combustible. So it fulfills that first criteria. Second criteria, same fire resistance period as the wall or floor. Are those materials, cement, mortar, gypsum-based plaster, and cement or gypsum-based vermiculite, after you've stuffed it into the opening, would it be giving you the same fire resistance period as required of the floor or wall that is going through? Well, how do we determine that? We do not know. Yeah, we do not know. We just know that the material is non-combustible, but I've got a hole in the wall. The wall is, say, a 4-hour rated wall. I stuff this material into the wall. I make sure I flush it nicely on both sides. How do I know? We do not know. We actually do not know. How do we determine that? So then you have to go through fire testing. Fire test, and in this case it's part 22. 476 part 22, method of determination of the fire resistance of non-load bearing elements of construction. Non-load bearing, all right, part 22. So you have to go through a test like this. And this is a standard test as prescribed in BS 476. It is, you have to erect the element, then you start the fire on one side and you measure the temperature and the spread of flame and all that. You observe. You measure the temperature and you observe whether the flames will spread through on the other side. Right? So this is BS 476 part 22. The question is this. How do you test gypsum? Okay, what was that? First, cement mortar. How do you test cement mortar using BS 476 part 22 to determine the fire rating? You can't. You haven't. No one has bothered to try it anyway. Right? So just on that element, same fire resistance period FRP as a wall or floor, we are not certain. You are not certain. Number 3, allow for thermal or physical movement. How do you determine if cement mortar, gypsum-based mortar, or the cement or gypsum-based vermiculite allows for thermal or physical movement? We do not know. Our plastering on the walls cracks all the time. You expose it to the sun, it starts to have hairline cracks. So how do we know? We do not know. And the thing we all know that they're very brittle. They are not mastic. They are not flexible. Right? You touch it a little bit, you move a pipe a little bit, it starts to break up and it starts to open up. So we do not know that. And structural support for large gaps, if you have got an opening really, really large, especially horizontal openings, would your cement mortar hold up? No, you pour it through the hole, it just drop right down to the bottom. So it's not going to work. So what we're really saying is this. For only the very, very typical situations, your small pipes penetration, a couple of cables going through, cement mortar, gypsum-based plaster, good luck. All right? We can sort of have some confidence, okay, deemed to comply, it will work. But anything more complex than that, you cannot. You have to go further. And this is where suppliers like Promat and all that come in. We have to rely on systems testing. And the current standards that are used for like EN 1366, EN 1364, for the different applications. Right? You notice here there are really some examples. So there are fire stopping system for penetrations, joints, perimeter joints, and quite a few others. Yeah? So those are the standards that we will have to refer to. So we as architects, if you've got situations like this that is beyond the parameters of what's prescribed in the UBBL, we have to go in this direction. You cannot rely on the prescriptive deemed to comply anymore because it doesn't. It actually doesn't comply. And also on that and on that. Right, so let's go through one example. Practical challenges from design to execution. How do we specify fire stops utilizing, this building information modeling, that's just the way we practice in our office. We, for the purposes of our very holistic documentation, we use BIM from design to total completion, even to LOD 500 for the purposes of documentation for future maintenance. And in particularly, it works with fire stop. Fire stop is one of the elements also, especially on the very complex applications. Like for example, there is one example, Chong was mentioning, the sleeve, where you can pull the cables in and out all the time, but the sleeve is always there. You're not damaging the sleeve. Right? So that's maintenance, you see. So when it comes to fire stops, we also have to allow for future maintenance, and these are documented. And using BIM information modeling, we produce these schedules and these data that the owners, building managers can use for the tracking of the maintenance or the documentation of one of these elements, which is fire stop. So step one, we have the design, of course. We are architects. Everything starts from design. Start with your design first. Get your design correct. Yeah? Don't worry about the bylaws, really. Because I've always said, if you use the UBBL and read it and treat it as a design guide, oh my goodness. We all end up with square buildings with 9-inch thick concrete walls and small window openings. It's not going to work. So always, always do not allow the bylaws to in any way restrict our creativity. We are architects. Go and dream. Design your dream building. Then we come back. The later part is our challenge. So start with the design first. And the design is here we use BIM documentation. So we, of course, immediately start off with the schematics, the placeholdings.
Testing.
Okay, thank you. Right, one of my approach to architecture is that there's a lot of times we say, finish off our design first. Engineers, they'll just wait in the background. They'll say, oh, architect, you finish your design first. When you finalize your plan, you give it to me. Okay, then I'll start designing my mechanical things. And then when they come back, they find that, you put aircon everywhere, aircon compressors are hanging all over the place, I've got pipes running everywhere. Oi, Mr. Engineer, you don't even understand my architectural plans. So what I do is that I preempt all of that. Now when we design, we are very, very conscious already of what are the elements that have to go in. We put placeholding, so those little white boxes, all these funny little boxes here, transparent boxes, those are placeholdings. That means we already pre-allocate where the engineers have to put their compressors, where the engineer put their gensets and all the main switchboards and all those items. So we pre-allocate shafts, risers, we pre-allocate for them, placeholding. It works a lot faster. So the engineers, when they take our BIM model, I say, Mr. Engineer, you are the mechanical guy, right? You're the HVAC. Good. You just refer to that layer, do everything you would love to do, or like to do, or want to do, or whatever, within that placeholding. Just do not go outside the box. So they're very happy because they don't have to think too much. Straight away, they follow everything within the BIM model. So we put placeholders in conceptual design models on everything. And then from there, as we develop, then the placeholders will be replaced with engineering elements as the design develops. So the engineers have to come back already. They see the placeholders. Each discipline would then come back with their own diagrammatic drawings already. Then from there, we will be able to identify where all the penetrations are. Because we have already done the placeholding, we know where we have already allowed the engineers to run their services. And when the engineers come back, we will start to identify details. So engineering elements are then developed into detailed components and positions. Right, so then the step 2 would be, this is the slightly more difficult part already. This is the part where I usually start to say, bye, I got a very important meeting. Thank you guys, you know how to sort it out, right? Because it does take a lot of effort now. And this is also the part where we will have to start engaging ourselves with our preferred suppliers. Name a few. There are many people out there, but since today is ProMat, we will have to say suppliers, for example, ProMat. Okay. There are actually a lot more, so you just go to the yellow pages. No more yellow pages, yeah. All right, so this is where we have to specify. So by having the initial BIM model, after the placeholding, when the engineers come back with the details ready, we will start identifying, first round of identification, where are cables going through, where are pipes going through, where are ducts going through and all that. And then from there, with references to information from suppliers, we can try and identify first, the first round of what are the components that we will eventually want to be looking at. Yeah, what are specifications, what are the design parameters, what is the limitations of all the various materials and all the various systems. Right, then from there, we will want to, before we go any further after that, we want to be assured that we are in a position to sign the Borang C3 form. And that would mean that we have to check on the certifications. So this is very, very important. The certifications are very, very precise with Bomba. For example, first they have to look exactly at what the material is. Then the attachment from this initial certification would be very descriptive of where this material can be installed and on what situations. And it give you the limitations also. So you have to look at this very, very thoroughly to ensure that whatever you're specifying is actually the correct application for that particular situation. This one does involve a lot of manual work. AI cannot help us here yet. So yeah, do find a supplier who is friendly, who's willing to sit beside you and guide your hand. And it's hard work. Okay, this is really hard work. Nothing replaces hard work. So certificate of approval for the use of fire safety products. This is essential. Then be very, very specific as architects, because you're going to we are signing our entire career away with this one. So be very, very specific. Know exactly what's the product name and type so they can specify it correctly. What does it actually look like? What is the test standard? Is the test standard relevant? And who's the manufacturer? Who's the supplier? The fire rating for that particular specimen that you're testing. The test reports. Read through the test reports, because the test reports will contain the parameters of the test, and also the actual results. What does the actual results say? Not only just pass or fail, but you can also see by reading the results, you'll know the characteristics of material. And then, very importantly, the permitted applications, or the limitations of the usage. Sometimes they'll say that this material is rated for this. It shall only be applied for this application. It cannot be used for another application, for example. So these are all very, very important. Then good. Then what is step 3? So we've done the design, we've done the specifications. This is the hard work. This is really, really the hard work now. So after you've done your design, that's the easiest part. After you've done the specification, good, data collecting, a bit of hard work, but now you really, really have to put it all together to ensure that you track every single thing. I myself find BIM using the common data environment really works very well for us, because everything are all there. Everybody is working on the same data environment. We are able to cross-check, cross-reference, and ultimately, the final check is always in the BIM model itself. All of us come together, we look at exactly the same BIM model, all the things integrated, we can see where all the clashes are, we know exactly what is being installed, what is being specified. So this is where it helps us a lot. And we really literally have to schedule every fire stop. So we have to identify every single position. And all of this will be documented in BIM. Every element will have its identity, will have its specifications, will have its general description. Yeah, literally we have to go through everything. And then from there, like you can see a lot of varieties here already in terms of all the different systems that you have to incorporate. So everyone will then, every single position will have a tag. And then from there, you will be the bill of materials will be generated automatically if you use the BIM documentation. Then from here, we'll be able to identify the location, the unique ID of every single cluster. If there are more than one fire stop in one location, we actually put it in a cluster, save ourselves a little bit of work. So in that location, we put it in the cluster. Product name and type, the specified fire rating, the dimensions and size, the types of penetrations, and of course, the quantity surveyor wants that one. They want the final one. So BIM can calculate it very quickly. And the quantity surveyor very happy. There's, goody, if you get all the documents. Contractors also will love it because they see it, they just rely on that. Yeah, but make sure it's a BQ contract because if it won't work if it's a lump sum. There'll be far too much, there'll just be far too much provisions for other things. So what is step 4 then? That's actual construction. So we don't go to construction until we've actually finished all our hard work, because if you try to specify fire stops during construction, you're already too late. Yeah, things will be in the absolute mess. Contractors will saying that, hey, that's not in my bills, that's not in my scope, and you'll be absolutely too late. And then some items will require long lead time. Just because I say I want that particular thing, you go to Promet will say, oh, I have to import this from Austria. You take another 5 months before it arrives, whatever. So you must do the hard work. Nothing beats hard work. You must do it, you must schedule it, you must design it. And when you go to construction, it is literally the assembly line already. Every component must have its place already, and we can then construct. So this is where then you start checking. As you construct, you have to look at all the different applications. Those are the colors. Yeah, they're the mixed block for very, very awkward penetrations. And there's a multiple mixed block for numerous cables. And a lot of this installation, especially when it comes to process utilities, they don't all come in at exactly the same time, for obvious reasons. So some openings will be left open for a very long time until these guys absolutely finish their work. And then some materials or some utilities will have to be installed after CCC. Then you say, how can I get my CCC if these guys haven't finished installing and I don't have the fire stop there? Right, so that's where you have certain specifications. For example, we use this thing is called I think this is maybe a proprietary name. So don't mention mixed block to Promet, they may not know what it is. Okay, some of these elements are like blocks, they're like plasticine. So if the cables are not there yet, you stuff in the plasticine, you put in the block, you can specify CCC, you see. And then when the guys come and install, they're just like plasticine. They remove the item, put in the cables, and stuff back the plasticine. So that's how it works. That's why you have to specify the correct material for the correct situation, right? So that you get your CCC. And then the maintenance people, when they come in for future, actually it's even also for future additions or upgrades. Process utility changes all the time. So after you get a CCC, next 2 months, someone comes along and says, oh, I need another new pipe coming right through here. So the correct material allows those maintenance to happen. So a lot of these things. For example, like this one here, that one is actually showing a tray. This is where the reinforcement, as we mentioned in the Malaysian standards, come in. This opening, this is a structural opening. You can see the edge of the slab over here. So this is one giant structural opening because we're allowing any cables of any size to come through it, right? So when this one comes through here, there's this frame. This is an additional frame that we have to make, and then there are the plates, bottom and top, and then it'll be filled with the blocks, with the intermittent blocks. Right, so the whole thing had to be constructed to be able to support itself and not to fall away in the event of a fire. Right, good. So after the construction, then what do we do? Inspection. This is CCC time ready. Bomba come ready. Say, Mana, you bring your certificate or you very very stressful. But when you go through the CCC, ultimately what we want to achieve is this. There will be tax. This one actually, this is not mandatory. Let's be very clear. These are the things that we specify for the client, because for this particular application, we do want to deliver to the client this level of documentation. So the things are clustered. For example, that tag is meant for, I think it's meant for that seal there, and then that upper tag is meant for the other one. And then this tag is meant for this cluster of 2 seals. So every tag will contain the code. The earlier intention for this particular project was that we were supposed to develop it to the QR code. The supplier was supposed to then give us the QR code. So every tag will have a QR code. So the future maintenance guy that goes in there, they scan the QR code, immediately they get access. Exactly. It's meant for that. But the QR code was a bit too late. We finished the building earlier, so we said, okay, temporarily let's manually write some text. But we haven't updated it to QR code yet, because after that, everyone sort of walked away and whistling into the sunset. But that's the intention. So we'll have the text. And this one helps us a lot also in our C1, C2, and C3 forms. Because when you write all of it, and then when Bombard comes, Bombard will just say, show me an example. Then we just pluck out one form and say, okay, this one here, the location, and so and so, and you bring them, bring Bombard to the location. This is what it means. Just an example. And Bombard sees that things are documented properly. They're very happy. They wouldn't dig too much to us. Okay, then step 6. So after you got your certification, then after you've done your inspection, then step 6 will be the certification of completion and compliance. This is where you sign the forms. And again, the form, make sure you have every single element identified, location, etc., and then we all sign it. So the manufacturer will sign it, the installer will sign it, and of course, ultimately, the architects will sign it. So architects sign passive fire stop elements, not the engineer. Of course, if the engineer wants to sign, go ahead. I'm very, very happy. But we being the principal architect, we really ought to know what the engineer is signing. Right? If you're happy to let the engineer do this job, we ought to know what is he actually doing, because not necessarily the engineers may be doing the right thing either. So ultimately, the responsibility is us. We are the QP, we are the PSP. And so after certification, what do we do next? We celebrate, okay, for a job well done, take your nice photographs, jump, go for a long holiday, take a break. Don't take too long, we come back, got the next job waiting, and away we go. So, okay, I thank you for this very short sharing. Then after the break, we'll go into the compartments and fire stops. Yeah. Is it fine? Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Architect Chong Siong, for the first part of your presentation. I think we were all very appreciative of your insightful sharing. We do look forward to continuing the second part after a short break. So I think we're going to take a 30 minutes break. It's 10:40 now, so really appreciate if everybody can make your way back to the hall before 11:10, so that we can then start the second part of the presentation on the dot. So just to guide the audience as well, there are refreshments available at the ground floor and the first floor for all the guests. And for the VIP, I think you're required to be at the holding room at level 2. We have some refreshments for you as well at level 2. So again, a reminder for the guests, ground floor and level 1. And please make yourself back here by 11:10 a.m. So with that, please enjoy the refreshments. But for the Muslim members, again, take it easy, rest, and we look forward to starting again at 11:10. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I think everybody is back in the hall, and wow, full capacity today. So just before we continue with our second half of the presentation, I thought of just doing a quick check on the demography of our audience today. Perhaps can we just have a show of hands to see who here are currently pursuing or preparing themselves to become an architect, partly going through your Part 3 examinations? Can we have a show of hands? Architect Adrianta dah AR. So just a show of hands once again for those who are currently pursuing to become an architect. So fair few bit of you guys. How about anyone who's already an architect? You've got your own practice. There's a few of mix as well. That's amazing. And how about those who are probably still in school? Part 1, Part 2, any chance? Anyone here? No. So pretty much everyone is practicing right now. But do we have anyone who's other than an architect by profession? There is. Amazing. So we do have a few who are actually from other professions as well. So that's amazing. So I think that will really be interesting when we head over after the second half of the presentation. We're going to have a Q&A session. So it'll be quite interesting to see different sort of ideas or intriguing questions you may have from different backgrounds that you would like to have yourself prepared for our speaker today. So please help prepare them and have that ready during our Q&A session later. So without any further ado, I would like to just continue with the session today. We'd like to re-invite Architect Chong Siong. I hope you are ready with the slides. And we'd like to invite you back on stage for the second half of the presentation. The floor is yours. Thank you.
It's okay. All right, thank you. So for the second half, we'll still continue with passive fire safety. Okay, this issue is with regards to the use of dry wall construction as a fire-rated wall. The UBBL is a prescriptive code. The UBBL says certain things, but there's nothing in the UBBL that specifically excludes the use of drywall constructions in any application. It doesn't do that. I wouldn't say confusion, but where the first directive was given was actually from Bomba. Way back in 2012, Bomba issued a directive limiting the use of drywall construction as a fire-rated wall. Right, okay, so what we'll do today, we'll just dwell into it. Maybe I'll need the other. Oops. It worked, okay. No, it's not okay. Sorry, I just need the other. I'll use this other one. Thank you. Okay, the first part of this is exactly the same. We are saying that, just to recap, the Uniform Building Bylaw is actually a prescriptive building code, right? And we all understand the basic concepts of fire safety. There is evacuation, passive containment, active intervention, and access for firefighting and rescue. Okay, we're all very, very familiar with this, and that's generally how we work through in terms of the methodology that we apply in our design for fire safety. However, now we have to understand from the prescription of Uniform Building Bylaws, items related to evacuation, passive containment, and active intervention, they come from very specific prescriptions with specific references to the purpose group of the building that you're doing and to the scale, size, volume, and context of the building that you're doing. And that will have very specific prescriptions for how you design evacuation, how you do passive containment, and how you do active intervention. Elements related to external, i.e. access for firefighting and rescue, like hydrants, fire appliance access ways, access openings, etc. Those are prescriptions with reference to your height of the building and to the volume for all building types. Just as a very simple illustration, we take it for granted, hydrants, provision of hydrants. Provision of hydrants are not specific to the building. Every building must have access to a hydrant of some sort. If you don't have a physical hydrant, you must have access to some sort of a body of water that you can use for the putting out of fire. All right. Now, okay, so again, under safe evacuation, only one fire at one location at one time, and the primary objective of compartmentation then is that it is to contain that one fire in that one location at all times. This is a basic principle that we apply. Going back to safe evacuation, we say only one fire at one location at one time. This is only a principle in the sense that when we do our design, unless you're designing a building for a very specific risk, like say for example, if you're fortunate enough to be engaged by, say, the government of the US of A to design the new embassy in Iran, boy, you can't use a UBBL, okay? They will have their own risk that they'll have to make known to you. Oh, I need to risk, my building must be able to withstand terrorist attack from the road. My building must be able to withstand the occurrence of arson fire at 5 different locations at one time, etc., etc. So those are known risks that you're designing for. If you're designing for a hazardous building with hazardous processes, you also have to recognize those special risks. However, for general speculative buildings that we design, just to comply with the bylaws, if you only take this approach that you assume a fire will occur anywhere in the building, but when it does occur, it really only occurs in one place at one time. Just use that principle and you would have been deemed to comply with the prescriptions of bylaw. Right? So it's actually a very, very basic principle on the basis that you can't be, it's really an unfortunate event should a fire occurs. You can't be that unfortunate that a fire will occur at 2 places or more at the same time. Right? Then the primary objective of compartmentation is when that fire occurs, you will have to get people to evacuate the building and compartmentation kicks in. It is the purpose of containing that fire within that one location at all times. We want to prevent the fire from spreading. And this is where fire-rated walls or compartmentation comes in. So what are the prescriptions of fire-rated walls in the UBBL 2021? These are the precise, defined elements in the UBBL that's being picked up that will require a fire rating. All these walls are meant for the purposes of contributing towards compartmentation, keeping the fire in the one location at one time. There's party wall, separating wall, compartment wall, external wall, protecting structures, and partitions. All these are prescribed in the UBBL. So let's look at the definitions first. A party wall. A party wall under interpretations, a party wall means a wall forming part of a building and used or constructed to be used for separation of adjoining buildings, belonging to different owners maybe, or occupied or constructed or adapted to be occupied by different persons, either constructed over a period of time or maybe abutting a common property, etc., etc., right? But generally a party wall, as the name implies, is the wall to separate you from a different party, whatever that party means. In a legal sense, when you're talking about from a sense of land ownership, of course, immediately, any wall or any barrier you put between your building from your neighbor's lot shall be a party wall because it is separating you from your neighbor. Right? So the key word here is separation of adjoining buildings belonging to different owners. That is the definition of a party wall. And what do you mean by party wall? Then what do you have to do if it's a party wall? In UBBL 2021, bylaw 86. Now, bylaw 86 is not in parts 7 and parts 8 of the UBBL. Part 7 starts at from bylaw 133, which are the definitions. Anything before that is under all the other 5 different parts of the bylaw. And bylaw 86 comes under construction, prescriptions for construction. So all party walls shall generally be not less than 200 millimeters total thickness of solid masonry. Right, that's the first part over there. Right, 200 millimeters of solid masonry. That's the first part. So it's prescriptive. The bylaw says that's a definition of a party wall. So when you build something functioning as a party wall, then the bylaw says it shall be constructed not less than 200 millimeters thickness of solid masonry. What is solid masonry? The common terminology when you say masonry, it means a collection or built out of a solid material, i.e. stone or clay, or in a more modern sense, bricks and blocks. But it also implies that if you do something out of concrete, out of mud brick, it can also be considered solid masonry. What it does mean is that it's referring to a material which is essentially very dense, solid, and most important of all, non-combustible. Right? An earthy material which is non-combustible. So that's the first part of the prescription of a party wall. It shall be 200 millimeters total thickness, cannot be less. By inference, I'm sure it can be more, but it cannot be less, and of solid masonry. And I say, okay, what else is there to talk about? That's what it says. No, but it also says, or if it's to be constructed of other materials of various thickness, but they then have to comply with Part 6, 7, and 8 of these bylaws. And here's a new one in UBBL 2021. A party wall shall have an acoustic performance of not less than SCC 50. Right, so here you see that in the prescription of the UBBL, a party wall first shall have a minimum thickness. It implies that it has to be constructed to a certain degree of solidness. Right? It can be other materials, etc. But first, minimum dimension, minimum thickness of 200 mm. It shall be of a certain density. And thirdly, a very new requirement, it shall have an acoustic performance of no less than STC 50. Okay, so that's a prescription of a party wall. You notice that here, it says nothing about fire rating. This is purely a constructional prescription. It doesn't say anything about the fire performance of this wall. Then further on, such a party wall shall be made of 2 separate skins. It says shall, so this becomes the base the base prescription of a construction of a party wall. It shall be made of 2 separate skins. Each of the skins shall not be less than 100 millimeters thickness if constructed at a different time. What in the world is this? When was the last time we actually constructed a party wall on 2 separate occasions? Now all developers, when they build everything in one go. They don't build it in 2 halves anymore. When was the last time in Malaysia you can buy yourself, say, a terrace house lot empty, and then you build your own terrace house? So you build your half of the brick wall first, and then when your neighbor comes in 5 months later, he builds his half of the brick wall. Never. In the Malaysian context, it doesn't apply anymore. But this was the base of the prescription. Again, it's been translated or transported or adopted entirely from the old British ordinance. The intention is still the same because that's how they do houses in the old British days, those townhouses. They built one at a time. So you will build your own lot first. You'll have your own 100 mm thick wall on your side of the boundary. And when your neighbor comes along, he builds his wall on his side of the boundary. Next day, when you want to demolish your house and refurbish everything, you demolish your wall on your side of the boundary without touching the neighbor's wall on his side of the boundary. So the intention is there, and that is the basic principle of it. A party wall is meant to be something physical that separates you from your neighbor with a certain distance, i.e. the thickness of the wall, and is of a certain density, solidity. Yeah? So you can't exactly have a Soji screen acting as a party wall between you and your neighbor, because the bylaws does not allow you to do that. Multi-story residential buildings of reinforced concrete or other frame construction shall be constructed to the requirements of these bylaws, and the party wall thereof shall not be less than 100 millimeters. So this is again the first point of I won't call it a deviation, but this is the first recognition that party walls need not necessarily always be a wall that you build for a landed property. Right? So if you're building a multi-story structure now, you have individual strata apartments. Between the apartment, there are different parties. So that is called a party wall. But in that situation, if the building is built as one single building of a homogeneous construction, then your party wall shall not be less than 100 millimeters total thickness at any point on the wall. That means you can vary the wall. A structural column may form part of your party wall, as an example, right? But nowhere in that point of a wall shall it be less than 100 millimeters thick. That is all it's saying. Then number 4, no combustible material shall be built into the thickness of any party wall unless not less than 100 millimeters of masonry or fire stop with an equivalent fire resistance period is provided between such materials. So this is an amendment in UBBL 2021. What it means here is that while we have defined the minimum thickness of a party wall, 200 mm, 2 skins of masonry, that will be applied for landed buildings. When you're building a single building and we have strata titles up there, your party wall shall then not be less than 100 mm. Now, item 4, it says that less than 100 mm shall not be of a combustible material, right? And that fire resistance of that assembly shall not be less than the prescribed FRP of that building. So that's where the amendment of the UBBL 2021 comes in. It just caps it up and wraps it up. And this is in the constructional prescription. And openings may be made or left in a party wall, provided that written consent of owners of the properties concerned are obtained and in accordance with this bylaw. And every opening in the party wall shall be reinstated to its original state, properly bonded therewith with the use of such an opening and when the use of such an opening has been discontinued. This is more of a permitting. This bylaw is more of a permitting nature. You got 2 different buildings. If you have consenting owners, you married your neighbor. So you said, okay, our family shall now be together. We shall not have a wall dividing the families. Good. You agree, you consent, you can break down the wall for all intents and purposes. Right? But should you get divorced later and you decide to separate again, then the wall must be reinstated. That is exactly what this law means. So, say party wall is in bylaw 86. It's not in the fire safety part 7 and part 8. So this is purely constructional descriptions. Yeah, and in some ways it's got a legal implication as well. Right? You shall not have access to your neighbor. You shall not hear your neighbor, STC 50. You shall not breathe into your neighbor. You shall not share your airspace with your neighbor. All right? And you must have minimum thickness of a separation between you and your neighbor. All right? So that is party wall. Okay, good. Now we talk about separating wall. Okay, separating wall, we jump straight into parts 7 already. Yeah, this is fire rating. So hang on a sec. Isn't a party wall a separating wall? Well, yeah, it is. All right, but the party wall is a legal definition. It is a wall that has to have a certain characteristic for it to function as a party wall. Whereas when it comes to separating wall, then we are talking about fire safety already. All right, so a separating wall is separating. Okay, let's see what a separating wall is supposed to be. Under the definition, bylaw 133, separating wall means a wall or part of a wall which is common to two adjoining buildings. Hey, isn't that a party wall? Ah, okay. What else? That's it, I think. Okay. But that's a party wall, right? Now, subject to the exceptions, okay, 141, separating wall. Subject to the exceptions as specified, any separating wall which forms a complete vertical wall separating any buildings, and nothing in this wall shall prohibit the passage through a separating wall of a pipe, and if fire stops when it passes. We saw this morning, earlier part of the morning on the fire stopping. So why is there now? Why don't we just call a separating wall a party wall? And any separating wall which forms a junction, etc., etc. This part here, any separating wall which forms a junction with the roof shall be carried above the surface of the roof to a distance of not less than 225 millimeters. This is the little bit of a parapet that goes up beyond the roof that we see in all our terrace houses that we all design, standard detailing. We always have a wall going through, right? So it comes from this bylaw. So what is it? Let's come back to that a bit later. The other item is the compartment wall. So a compartment wall and by inference the compartment floor means respectively a wall and a floor which complies with bylaw 148, another reference, and which are provided as such for the purposes of bylaw 136 to divide a building into compartments for any purposes in connection with bylaw 213 and 147. Exam questions do have questions like this. So be very quick with your flipping on your bylaws to quickly catch all these all these references. Okay, compartment wall then really is for the purposes of bylaw 136. So what is a compartment wall? Any building other than single-story building for a purpose group specified in the 5th schedule, which has any specified, which have any limitations to fire compartment limits. So a compartment wall is a wall that you put in for the purpose of creating fire compartments. For the purposes of limiting the fire compartment to within what is specified in the 5th schedule, or for whatever reason, like separating of purpose groups, separating of hazardous areas and all that. A compartment wall forms an element. If it's vertical, it's called a compartment wall. If it's horizontal, it's called a compartment floor or a compartment ceiling or compartment soffit. Right, so compartmentation here is any element that forms that envelope that defines the fire volume, the fire compartment volume. Right, that's quite self-explanatory. And 138, the following floors and walls in buildings shall be constructed as a compartment wall. Any floor in the building of a purpose group. 2, any wall or floor separating a flat or a masonette. Hey, isn't that a separating wall? And if it's a separating wall separating 2 different flats or masonette, isn't that a party wall? Now we're getting somewhere, I hope. Any floor and wall separating parts of a building from any other part for the same building or intended to be used for a different purpose, falling under different purpose groups. Right, so here you see there are 3 different layers already. You start off with a party wall, which is a legal definition. It's a party wall. It's a wall separating one owner from another owner, or one tenant from another tenant, legal tenants from another tenant. So that's a party wall. So that is a physical requirement. You must have something physical separating you from your neighbor. Then when it comes to separating wall becomes its fire safety requirement. when you have a party wall, the party wall shall be built as a separating wall. That means you have to have its fire rating, etc., and penetration through it and all that must be fire stop, etc., etc. And when the separating wall forms a part of a compartmentation, then it's to be built as a compartment wall. Right? So you start off with the legal definition first, then you go on to the characteristics of how you build a wall that gives you fire separation between parties. And then lastly, where it applies, that wall will have to form part of an element to define a fire compartment. Sounds a bit confusing, but at the end of the day, you'll find that we are actually cooking the same thing, and it's just a matter of identifying the different recipes for its purpose. Just to add in more confusion, there's also the description of an external wall. So external wall, for obvious reasons, is an external wall. It means an outer layer of a building, not being a party wall, oh dear. Notwithstanding that it may immediately adjoin a wall of another building. So this is really, external wall is really the external envelope, any reference to an external envelope. So if any external wall, etc., etc., okay, this one starts to prescribe more into the details. And this is where the sixth schedule comes in. So by nature, an external wall, the immediate thing is that they say all buildings are elements of structure. If you refer to the definition of elements of structure, it includes external wall. So if I say the building has got a 2-hour fire rating, the external wall is an element of structure, so therefore it's 2-hour fire rating. That's why I said, if you start designing buildings using the bylaw as a guide, we will all end up designing square boxes without windows. Because it says the external wall is an element of structure and it must have fire rating. So how do I do a fire rated window? Okay lah, you do a fire rated door panel, all right? So you open a fire rated door panel, then you can get the light and ventilation in. Now, the application of external wall is this. It is, as a base, it is to be fire rated because it forms the compartment of a building. But in recognition of openings, by functionality, that's where the sixth schedule comes in. Right? If you have an opening in the wall, obviously then the opening is not fire rated. So that opening forms the risk to your adjacent property. And that's where the calculation of the sixth schedule, the percentage of openings versus the distance to your notional boundary comes in, right? But on the basis that if you are allowed to have, if your building is so far away and you pose no risk to your neighbors, practically your entire wall can be a window. And if your entire wall is a window, then obviously you don't fire protect a window in that sense. Yeah? Okay, we'll clear it. Following on very closely with the specifications of the external wall, then comes with cladding on the external wall. And this is bylaw 144, and this is where BS 8414 comes in. So any cladding or any surface of the external wall, if you're higher than 18 meters, now you have to comply with BS 8414, full-scale testing. And anything that is below 18 meters, sorry, I have to rephrase that. It is not in reference to the height of the wall that this applies. This is with reference to the height of your building. If your building is higher than 18 meters, your cladding must go for full-scale BS 8414 testing. If your building is lower than 18 meters, then it must be class O in terms of the surfacing. Yeah, it is not that all wall cladding above 18 meters, you go for BS 8414, and all wall cladding below 18 meters, you just do class O. No, it's not. If your building is taller than 80 meters, your entire wall cladding have to go for BS 8414. And that would be another 1 hour for us to go through BS 8414. Then still on external wall, on the protection, fire protection, it will be the horizontal and vertical barriers. Sean Lee did share to us on the application on how they construct using drywall construction to provide horizontal and vertical barriers on external walls. Right, this is where it comes in. Okay, then further on, under elements of structure, you've got protecting structures. We talked about protected shafts, like stairways and lifts, protecting structures on any walls and floor, which encloses the shaft. Then there'll be partitions and protected corridors and protected lobbies. So protected corridor here means a corridor separated from the building itself by partitions having FRP of not less than half hour, and which partitions have all openings therein fitted with fixed lights and self-closing doors, having an FRP of not less than half an hour. Remember what I was talking about just now? When you use half ratings, and in any case, it shall not be less than half an hour. Okay? On protected corridors and on protected lobbies, lobbies shall be enclosed throughout by partitions having FRP of not less than half hour, and has all openings therein fitted with fixed glass and lights, and of having FRP of not less than half an hour. Good, then the elements of structure. So any elements of structure, anything that once you determine the fire rating of your building, it shall be applied to all elements of structure, and there it is. So it's any structure forming a structural steel, forming a structural frame, including the floor, external wall, separating wall, compartment wall, structures enclosing protected shaft, load-bearing walls or load-bearing parts of a wall, and a gallery. A gallery means an elevated walkway or a mezzanine floor. Right? That's called a gallery. So there we have it. So today we're talking about walls. So the 4 elements are there: external wall, separating wall, compartment wall, and protected shaft. So separating fire risk, bylaw 139. The following areas shall be separated from the other areas of the occupancy, with an element of structure of a fire resistance period as specified in the 9th schedule. These are hazardous deemed rooms that are deemed hazardous. Okay, a boiler room, repair shop, storage of hazardous materials, LPG gas storage, transformer rooms, substations, flammable liquid stores, a shaft for electrical risers, ELVs, and even a cold room. The cold room is a very recent insertion, also UBBL 2021. It refers to like freezer rooms, those cold chain storage, warehouses, and all that. The reason being is the systems, the refrigerant systems are usually very flammable. For example, ammonia and those elements. So that has been recently inserted. So now I think there is, Bomba has issued a new set of guidelines already that if you are doing cold chain storage, you do have to go back to Bomba HQ for as a special purpose building. Good, now we're looking at the fire resistance. So we've determined all the different definitions of the different kind of walls. We have gone through the prescriptions of the methods of construction, and we have also gone through where you get your prescriptions on the fire rating and what are the elements of structure, what are the items regarded as an elements of structure. So now we have fire resistance, and fire resistance you're referring to the 9th schedule. Okay, this is quite simple. We have all gone through that. Fire resistance for any elements of structure constructed in accordance with specifications given in the 9th schedule, and the notional period of fire resistance for that appropriate part of for the appropriate building. And test of fire resistance. So this morning, or earlier part of the morning, we saw what do you mean by fire rating. So here is again the same thing. We are referring to the same thing. You have to be in accordance with BS 476. And this being, we're talking about a separation wall, compartment wall, and all that. We are talking about just one element, that is the resistance of this material to prevent the fire from spreading from one side of the wall to the other side. So now the big question comes in. Party wall, separating wall, or compartment wall? Everybody gets it confused, especially Bombard. Right? It's actually all in our bylaw, really. You just have to read in between the lines. Bylaw 86, just reiterate again, a party wall means a wall constructed to be used for separating of adjoining buildings belonging to different owners. So with all the things that we have seen, what are the fire safety installation requirements? Compartment wall mean a wall to divide a building into compartments. A separating wall means a wall which is common to two adjoining buildings. Those are the fire safety requirements. The first one is a constructional requirement. So the second one is a fire safety requirement. So how do you then apply? As an example, a terrace house. A terrace house is the most basic description of a party wall because you're building on land. You got two different parties. So what is the criteria for a party wall on a landed property? Minimum thickness 200 of solid masonry construction. Then what are the fire safety requirements? It is a separating wall. So it has to be constructed as a separating wall. So therefore, a party wall will first have to be constructed 200 mm minimum, solid masonry of some sort, or any other material with different layers, provided that you don't have any combustible materials in at least minimum 100 mm thickness of the wall. Right? Correct? Good. And then as a separating wall, what do you have to do as a separating wall? You have to fire stop. If you have any pipes and flues crossing, you have to do all the fire stopping and specifically separating wall. If you got a roof, what do? You bring it 225 mm minimum above the roof. Okay, so that's how we read it. So a bomber officer cannot come and tell you that, oh, your walls must be 200 thick, must be solid masonry. That's not Bombard's job. Bombard's job is to look at, as a separating wall, do you have the 225 mm above, and do you have the minimum 100 mm non-combustible core in the wall? That is Bombard's job. Whose job is this to tell you that? Whose job is this to govern or to ensure that you're building minimum 200 mm thick? That job goes to the Majlis, because that's under construction. Of course, when was the last time Majlis checks your plans? Never lah. Okay, that's another story. I hope this is not recorded. I'm in big trouble. As another example, multi-story apartments. So those are party walls, right? So it has to be constructed as a party wall. But it is now a compartment wall in this purpose. It is both a separating wall and a compartment wall. But if these are the lower floors, it doesn't go up to the roof, then you don't have the situation where you have that separating wall, that 225 mm thick going through the roof. So what is this then? Then in this case, it is a compartment wall because there is a clause that says that all individual flats and masonettes must be fire separated or fire compartmented from all adjoining spaces. So this is a compartment wall. So in this situation, you built it as a party wall and as a compartment wall. Huh? Yeah, different owners. But because if it's a separating unit, they are different owners. But of course, the same thing applies as a party wall. If you get married, you decide to break it open, you may, but don't break open where the structures are, because now you're in a single building. So you got elements of structure forming your party wall. Right? So you can break down the non-load bearing areas, but you can't break down obviously you can't break down the structures to do the connection. Great. So now let's look at the other application first. So adjoining buildings, separating wall to be constructed to comply with bylaw 141 and 147. One of the applications that we use most for purposes of a separating wall is the measurement of building height. When you have a situation like that, you got a podium area, and then you got a tower beside it. If you have a separating wall element there, then you're effectively separating the building height. The building height can be defined separately by having that. So the portion A, the building height would be same problem. Okay, the building height will be measured on portion A because it's separated by a separating wall from part on the portion B, the B part of the building. So the height can be measured separately. What is the implication of this? Well, the first thing is, of course, the application of firefighting shafts, the risers, the fireman's lift. Right? So if A is higher than 80 meters, you have the firefighting shaft. But the portion B, if it's less than 80 meters, you need not then have firefighting shafts serving that part of the building. So this is an immediate application. Good. Now we come to Bomba Circular, 17 February 2012. That is 13 years ago. It's an arahan. So arahan means just that. It is, you shall comply. It is from the Director General. And this one is on the had kegunaan bagi drywall construction and partition systems. This is verbatim. It's taken exactly from the guideline. So there's nothing altered on this. It gives you the jenis dinding, what type of wall construction, and an example, and the limitations of its use. So on the first one, dinding proscenium wall. Of course, proscenium wall is the wall separating on stage between the backstage and the front stage of a theater or of a podium. You are allowed to use drywall construction. This one is specifically on the usage of drywall construction and partition systems. So for this one, you are allowed. You may use drywall construction for a proscenium wall. Okay, that's fine. Then let's go on. Protecting structures. So protecting structures are, from the definition, lift course. Your protected shafts, your staircases, your exit staircases. You cannot use drywall construction. Oops, sorry. Yeah, you cannot use drywall construction. Party walls, separating wall or compartment wall, never mind. First definition, is it a party wall? If it is, you're not allowed to use drywall construction. Then compartment wall. What if my compartment wall is a party wall? Never mind, ignore that first. Okay, if it's a compartment wall, anyway, it also tidak dibenarkan. Except, here there's a qualification here, kecuali untuk drywall jenis solid or infill as a compartment wall, right? So that means there should not be any cavity. It can be made of several layers, but it has to be solid and it has to be infilled. Either it's solid as a homogeneous material or it has to be fully infilled. That means a cavity is not allowed in that wall. So this is a construction method. Separating wall. Wasn't that a party wall? Never mind. Again, it says you are not allowed to use drywall construction with the exception of drywall construction that is either solid, homogeneous material, or is thoroughly infilled without any cavity. External wall. yes, you may use drywall construction for the external wall, even on the parts that require fire rating. For partitions, internal partitioning, what kind of a partition? Partitions for the separation under UBBL 139, partitions for the separation of hazardous goods area, separation of all those listing is exactly as what we saw in the bylaw. It is not allowed. You cannot use drywall construction for the separation of hazardous rooms or hazardous areas. And the entire list is there. But however, partitions for the separation of offices and the little storage areas, you may have an office, you've got a little pantry, or you may have an office and you've got the file storage room, a small cabinet that we put in A4 photocopy paper, whatever. So it's considered lower risk. Yes, you may use drywall partitioning, as mentioned over here. Like the bilik file, the filing room, you may use drywall construction. And then for hotel rooms are technically separating walls, right? Because they're actually separating different tenants. But if you look at it in totality, hotel rooms are first and foremost compartment walls because they are required for the purposes of separating, limiting fire compartments to each of the residency units. So yes, you are allowed, right? With the condition dengan syarat tiada apa-apa pembukaan dan tiada pendawaian di dalam dinding sebagaimana spesifikasi ujian. In other words, that prescription earlier that you shall, no matter what you do, is minimum 100 millimeter thick, and that 100 millimeter thick has to be non-combustible. So you can chase in cablings on either side and all that, but provided you have minimum 100 millimeter thick of solid infill or solid non-combustible material separating you from your neighbor. Protected corridors, yes, you are allowed, except for where it involves sleeping risk. And if that is the case, then you have to have the drywall, which is solid and infill. That means they're talking about sleeping quarters here. And the walls for a laundry, for the firefighting access lobby. The wall for the lobby menentang kebakaran, the firefighting access lobby, firefighting lobby, okay, tidak dibenarkan. You cannot use drywall construction for firefighting lobbies. And dinding lobby, the common lobbies that are not specifically specified as a firefighting shaft, yes, you may use drywall construction. Data rooms, computer rooms, you are allowed to use drywall construction. Operation theaters for hospitals, you are not allowed to use partitions. So that is very, very confusing. There's a lot of individual separations, a lot of individual specifications, but I'm attempting to summarize it for you over here in terms of what it means. The whole purpose or the whole reason why in 2012 Bomba came up with this particular set of arahan is because there were a lot of abuses on the use of drywall as firewalls. One of the biggest abuse is in, like, say, factories and warehouses. Warehouses, if you build multi-story warehouses, we're all aware they got compartment limits. Right? Warehouses do have compartment limits, and there is a tendency for developers, especially the speculative developers, not the end users. End users who are wanting their own factory and their own warehouse, they are very precise with their own requirements and they fully understand how to construct a building. But it is speculative developers, people who build warehouses and they just sell it to, pre-build the warehouse and they just sell it to whoever the new occupants are. Fire compartmentation can be very limiting because when you're a fire compartment, you're limiting the size of the fire compartment. Then your new buyer who's willing to spend $10 million to buy your factory, and they say, oh yeah, I don't want a party wall there, I want it to be one hole open. And then the developer saying, Law, if I remove the compartment wall, I have to add in sprinklers, I have to add in smoke control, I have to add in so many other things that will drive up my construction costs. So developers, I'm not against developers, so I'm just saying, people have been abusing compartmentation. What they do is that they use drywall construction because it's so easy. Specify drywall construction, and they partition up the entire building, and they call it individual fire compartments. They keep the fire compartments small, so you don't need smoke control. They keep the fire compartment small so that the fire compartment is much smaller than the limits. And then what happens? When they sell off the building, none of the active systems have been installed because you don't need the active system because the fire compartments are so small. The new owner comes in, he tears down all the fire partitions, and voila, you get a giant building without any active systems installed. So that was abused, thoroughly abused in those days. So came 2012, Bomba said enough is enough. We want to control the use of fire drywall construction for this purpose. Right. So it is not a technical reason. It is more of a legal reason or more of an enforcement for enforcement purposes. Yeah. People are abusing it. Okay, it's not to say that our suppliers' materials, firewalls are no good. No, it's not. It's just that it's been abused and Bomba is just clamping it down. So anyway, in summary, as it stands today, the revised UBBL 2021 does not put any clarity on this because this one is an arahan. Yeah, it doesn't change the bylaws. The bylaws remain exactly as what I brought you through. This is purely an arahan. So until the Director General issues an arahan to retract this arahan, this is still in place. So in summary, this is what it means. You're looking at party wall under the definition of Bylaw 86. Then you're looking at protecting structures, Bylaw 139 on separation walls, on Bylaw 139 separations of hazardous areas, specification of separating wall, compartment wall, external wall on the protected surfaces of, required protected surfaces of external walls, unprotected areas, and partitions. So this is my summary. So according to a uniform bylaw, the 9th schedule, where is prescribed, all those elements will be prescribed. You refer to the 9th schedule for the fire rating for each of these elements, the required fire rating on the 9th schedule. Then dry walls, I have to split it into two because you notice that where dry walls are approved or where dry walls are allowed to be used, there's also where dry walls are not allowed to be used with the exception of the drywall being solid or infill. Okay, so that means that you may use drywall, solid or infill for that purpose. So that is how it comes. You may use drywall construction provided it's solid and infill for separating walls, compartment walls, external walls, unprotected area, not applicable, and partitions. But you may not use drywall construction for the others. And then for just drywalls only, without particularly the specification of solid and infill, you may only use it for external walls and for partitions. Right? All other applications are not allowed. Therefore, this is a summary. I hope I've given some clarity. Yeah. If you want to talk to Bomba, you may show him this without telling him who it came from. And if he say, prove to me, then you take my slide without showing him where it came from again, and refer to all the clauses that I've already got in here. All right, okay, you've got all of them compiled to give us this summary. So I hope this one sheds a bit of clarity for you guys. I hope I'm not taking over time. Okay, so I will stop here. So thank you very much for your session.
Thank you very much, Architect Chong Siong, for sharing such a vital knowledge on the UBBL and on all the different types of walls. So it's really, truly sort of eye-opening to really understand the different types of elements that we have always been dealing with. It's just to have a better clarity on these components. Just before we continue, as I highlighted earlier, we'll just have a Q&A session with Architect Chong Siong here. So let me have the mic. We'll have about, do we have 30 minutes? 15. So I think we'll have only about 15 minutes or so for anyone from the audience. I'm sure you may have some intriguing questions that you would like to ask. And we'll just get our assistants on the floor to bring the microphones to you. So for you to ask questions to Architect Chong Siong. Kindly state your name, and for the benefit of time, we appreciate if the audience could just keep your questions concise and clear. So, do we have our first question? Yes.
Yes,
Over there.
my name is Michael here. I'd like to ask Architect Chong over here. Okay. Just now, I think this is more for the margins purpose. Just now you mentioned the party wall for the landed property to skin. How about the structure of it? That means the RC bin, you need to construct 2 times. It's possible, right?
No, not like that. No. Of course, all our construction is on the on a single RC frame already, lah. So the 2-skin one is as per prescribed in the bylaw. If you decide to build it in 2 separate times, so otherwise it's just a thickness 200 mm as a single. Well, your full brick, lah. Yeah, that will work.
Okay, actually, what's the purpose, what's the origin of this requirement?
This 2-skin thing,
Yes.
Because it came from the old British ordinance. In the old British days, the terrace houses, say in London or something, everyone had their own subdivided lot. Everyone built their own house individually. So when they build their own house, you have to say, please build your half of the wall first. So they built 100 mm thick, and the neighbor comes in and they build their own 100 mm.
Okay, so right now, if the case is under the renovation, we got approval from double story to 3-story. Let's say right now the party wall, can we build on my neighbor party wall?
No, you
to
cannot.
increase?
You cannot.
You can't, right?
You
So
cannot.
we can
You can only build on your side.
the 100 mm thick.
On your side.
Yes, on my side.
But of course, if your structural requirement, you need to be more than 100 mm for structural purposes.
Yes.
Technically, 100 mm on your side suffice. Yeah, but if for structural purposes, like say your columns and all that, you need more than 100 mm. You have to eat into your own land.
Yeah, I understand.
you
Then you
cannot
create the
go to
nib
the
lah.
neighbor.
Create the
Yes,
nib and then
that's
go up.
correct,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Unless, of course, you agree with your neighbor. Say, look, I'll extend the wall all the way up for you. Yeah, then you get your full 200. Yeah.
I'll join in sitting next to you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that question. Perhaps anyone else from the floor? Just raise your hands and we'll pass the mic over.
Over the mic.
Not the floor,
Yeah.
on the mezzanine floor. So,
The mic is on.
so sorry, but perhaps the mic is just next to you over there. If you're able to get that, it'll be easier for everyone to hear. Just state your name and keep your questions concise. Thanks.
Test. Okay, good morning. My name is Vincent. So I have a very quick question to AR Chong. So I would like to know, can a half FRP be applied on a non-fire shaft but it's a compartment wall opening element, saying that per se it's a refuse chamber inside a smoke lobbies? Do we have to, can the half FRP be applied onto the door we are providing for the refuse chamber itself?
Okay, good question. The main criteria of using the half rating thing is that your fire load is coming from only one side. Like for example, the idea of the protected shaft, there's no fire load in the shaft, and the fire load is only coming from the occupied area. So you have half the rating for the fire to go into the shaft, and in the worst case scenario, the fire burns in the shaft, and half the other rating to protect it from going into the upper floor. In the case of the lift lobby, especially if it's a firefighting access lobby, it needs to be fully protected. So if you have another element, a hazardous element within the fire protected lobby, then that one must be protected fully. It comes under the clause 139 that we mentioned just now. So it must have a full rating. If it's 2 hours, then all elements must be 2 hours. Because your refuse chamber is a fire load.
Understand. Thank you very much. So this is my second question. We are required to construct a fire door for high-rises residentials. So is there any backstory about why do we have to provide such a fire doors for each residential unit?
There's no backstory because the bylaw actually says that very clearly. I can't remember the clause now. I failed. There is a clause, very, very specifically. It says, 136, is it? Yeah. All individual maisonettes or apartments shall be fire separated from all adjacent areas. So that means you must be separated from the corridor, from the common lobby. Now, where you have situations that you don't have a fire door opening directly into the protected corridor, is like in the case of an open corridor, where you have an air well. Of course, you have windows opening into the air well, that's definitely permitted. And you have a separation, a horizontal separation of no less than 2 meters to your corridor. See, that would then be regarded as an external corridor. Right? And there is a very specific clause in the bylaw. I can't remember the clause again, so I'm sorry. You have to check, okay. I failed. But anyway,
No worries.
anyone that's sitting for part 3, don't worry too much about getting the right clauses. It's an open book exam. Just look at it. I can't remember the clauses. I failed. So anyway, my apologies. So if you design the corridor as an open corridor, that means you must have a physical horizontal and vertical separation for your fire risk. And if you have that minimum 2 meters horizontal separation, then your door can become an opening, so it need not be a protected surface. It becomes an unprotected opening.
So it need to comply to certain distance.
Yeah.
That's what sir mean.
Minimum is 2 meters horizontal distance.
Okay, some additional question towards my first question, which I mentioned about the half FRP. So what if our refuse room is not being placed in the fire access lobby?
Not being placed in the fire access
Yeah.
lobby. Well, basically, a refuse room is a fire load on its own, so you just have to protect it. It's not a shaft or anything. Yeah, so it is a hazardous area, like say, that one is bylaw 139. Right, so it's regarded as a fire risk area, so you must have full protection.
Full protections. Okay. Thanks a lot. Good day.
Thank you very much for the question. Just before we proceed on to the next question, just to follow up on that, Architect Chong, that was just for residential where we needed to have the compartments, where the doors needed to be. But how does that, is that the same application to hotel rooms?
Yes,
is that the same bylaw, just for the benefit of the audience?
Because a hotel room is a
flat
residential
or a residential unit.
Yeah, the interpretation is flat or maisonette, i.e. a residential unit.
Thank you on that. Perhaps moving on, can you please state your name?
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon. My name is Lei Ting. A question to ask Al Chong. Okay, we understood from your lecture just now is my question is about the party wall and compartmentation wall. So for party wall, it required 200 minimum thickness for the individual owner. Okay, what if a situation we have a strata development say 4-story of the shop, with behind there's a 3-story of the car parks. So in the strata development, you have the shops. So the shops also is to be sold or to be sold to individual owner. So the wall in between the two units, it will constitute a party wall or retail wall. If we specify the wall thickness is, say, 150, so it will define as a compartment wall, but if so, then it cannot comply with party wall of minimum 200 thickness.
Yeah, but as I mentioned, in the UBL 2021, we already added on to the clause 86, where the first part is the base requirement, party wall, 200 mm thick, solid masonry and all that, if it's built on two sides and all those things. But it says or means you can, on the same basis, you may use a different composite wall construction and all that, provided you don't have any
Penetration.
combustible elements less than 100 mm thick separating between you and the other one. Then, on multi-story construction, is really specifically mentioned, you may go down to 100 mm thick, provided, no part of the wall may be less than 100 mm thick. Yeah, it says it cannot be less than 100 mm thick. So if you provide a wall 100 mm thick in your situation, definitely is allowed. But you cannot chase any electrical outlets into the wall. Lor. Yeah, your electrical outlets must be surface mount. Because the moment you chase it in, you have less than 100 mm thick.
Okay.
That's the key point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Yes, it is 100 mm minimum separation of a non-combustible material. Yeah, the question is that does it apply to masonry or any other thing? The key criteria is that no matter what you do, you shall not have less than 100 mm thick of a dense, non-combustible material separating you from your neighbor. That is the key criteria. Yep.
Just want to ask about the separating wall for dry wall. For the infill, the rock wool insulation, can it be considered as infill?
Yes, it is. Yes, can. For the drywall, when it comes to that prescription of solid or infill, yes.
So it doesn't need to be solid.
Well, it is material.
Okay.
What is it? It's talking about dense material infill. That means no air gaps, no cavity per se. Yeah, and of course, all of these drywalls, you have to go for the testing, the BS 876 Part 22. So all of those materials, whichever way you specify it, it must be sent for testing, and you must get the certification.
Work for the STC 50.
STC 50 will not be covered by BS 476 Part 22.
I mean the
Yeah.
insulation infill.
Yeah. That one you'll have to have a separate calculation or separate test to prove it. But because it's under the Majlis, it's not under Bomba. Bomba is not concerned about your STC. As far as I know today, has anyone ever experienced any local Majlis asking you to prove that your wall is designed to STC 50? No. Okay, we never had this conversation. But because it's in the bylaw and we are the ones signing it, if nobody asks, we are the ones certifying that it is. So I'll suggest start talking to some acoustic consultants. A lot of times they don't actually have to do a test. They do a calculation. So it is by prescription, by calculation. They say what's the density of the material, how much plastering you're using, or in the drywall solid infill situation, they can calculate it. Same way as they calculate the U value, right? They will be able to do the calculation for you. And the test is very simple. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Perhaps I think we have another question to the gentleman up there once again.
Okay, good morning, sir. So my name is Vincent again. So just a quick question on to, open structure parkings. Do we need any compartmentations towards usually we have very gigantic open structures like parking Right. So we were understand that there's a certain requirements saying that we need to, which is something to do with 60 meters on from the current portion of the openings that we need to have a compartmentations. Do we have any more details onto these matters? Basically, how do we do compartmentations on a open structure parking?
First I go to the definition of open structure. The definition of open structure within the Uniform Building Bylaws, the particular definition of open structure and open corridors is specifically for the application of the 10 schedule. That means what are the active systems that you are supposed to install if your building or if your design is classified as an open structure or your corridor is classified as an open corridor. It is not for any other purpose. It is not for the purposes of not having smoke control. It is not for the purposes of not having to comply with the 5th schedule compartment limits. It is not for the purposes of not having to comply with the floor-to-floor compartmentation prescriptions. It is solely for the use of the 10th schedule.
I see. Okay.
Right, so how do you calculate compartmentation or open structure? Very simple, because the bylaw has given us the method of calculation. Volumes are calculated volumes are calculated to the inner surface of your compartment. It does not take into consideration columns and beams and all that within the compartment. That means columns and beams is as part of your volume, it's not to be deducted from your volume. And where you have a window, you calculate it to an imaginary outer surface that's closing off the window. Imaginary outer surface. Yeah? So because if you've got a window of glass, it's not fire rated. So you just calculate it including the thickness of your wall to the outer surface.
Including the thickness?
Yeah. I mean, basically you don't include the thickness of the wall, but you calculate it to the outer surface of the opening. Yeah, so that is in the rule of calculation. Yeah, so it's very, very clear. So open structure does not in any way give you any waiver on the compartment limits.
I see.
And it doesn't give you waiver on the floor-to-floor compartment either.
Okay, that helps a lot.
Thank you very much. I think I saw another person down. Yeah, we just have one gentleman at the very end. Perhaps can get the microphone over. And I believe we might be able to take one last one after this. But please proceed. State your name, please.
Hi, my name is Sim. I just wanted to ask about this thing about the compartmentation of a cold room. A new requirement.
Cold room is now defined as a hazardous area that you have to compartment or you have to separate.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're designing, say a cold room, freezer room, and all that within, say, a warehouse, you have the cold chain storage. That cold room itself must be compartmented off or fire separated.
Stated anywhere in?
Yes, because it's in the UBBL 139 now. Cold room is there.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just that.
Effectively means that it's not only walls. I mean, you need to take care of the.
It's basically fire compartmentation.
Either full height wall or including the.
Correct. Basically, you have to separate it. You have to separate that one from all adjacent compartments.
Effective of size.
Correct. Yeah.
Effective of size.
Irregardless of size. Yeah. And that compartment, of course, with storage, you'll be limited by the 5th schedule also in terms of the compartment limits for storage. Yeah. Then the active systems, you have to then refer to BOMBA, because BOMBA will have very specific requirements for the active systems.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll just take one last question.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Li Wei Kang. I'm not an architect, but I want to ask one question, sir, regarding the scupper drain. Am I allowed to put scupper drain between two compartments?
Scupper drains between two compartments?
Yeah, example in basement, so the compartment, the scupper drain is crossing two compartments.
Oh, I see. Flowing from one
Yes.
compartment to another.
Yeah.
Just a scupper drain just at the bottom.
Yes.
Okay, I will say the bylaws are the prescription, absolutely silent on that. If you're regarding the scupper drain as a opening in a wall, then it actually falls under exactly the same prescriptions as that. You're talking about fire stops and all these things.
Any product?
That is on the purposes of the prescriptive compliance. So I don't know how we're going to do it. I mean, it's a scupper drain. Do you have a one-way valve? Or
Is there any product for this situation?
So I don't know. But okay, then putting the bylaw aside, I will look at the practical applications. Would a scupper drain at the bottom of the wall, and most likely your scupper drain is below the surface of the wall, right? I mean below the surface of your floor, of course. Yeah? So it's actually a depression. And how big is a scupper drain?
Very shallow.
Very shallow, maybe 2 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how wide would it be? Maybe 4 inches.
Maybe less than the hundreds.
Yeah, and it's at the bottom, it's at the floor level.
Yes.
Would it actually pose a fire risk? Of course, if you could go by prescription, you say, yeah, any opening in the wall is defined as an opening, you have to protect it. But from a practical point of view, my personal point of view, I think that it doesn't make the slightest difference. If a fire burns, I will not have smoke coming down from I will not have the smoke coming out from the scupper drain, unless unless you've already got the flash over in the entire compartment. So don't design that.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, that's my point. That's my point. Yeah. That's my point. Yeah. So by prescription, I have to say you have to fire stop it. By prescription. Yeah. I would say have no effect. Yeah. Yeah, but don't quote me on that.
We did not speak of that today.
We did not talk about that today.
Well, I think we'll consider that as a bunch of questions we really appreciate from the audience. I think one round of applause to Architect Chong here today for such an informative day.
Thank you.
Excellent day today we had with you. Heartfelt thank you to Architect Chong for this insightful presentation, and also to our sponsors, eTex Malaysia, thank you very much. But just before everybody leaves, a humble reminder, you're also required to scan the QR code before you leave to make sure you get your CPD. So I hope the ones who had left earlier would have been informed of that. But nonetheless, the rest here, please remember to scan the QR code before you leave. Just to check with the organizers, do we have a group photo? Yes, no? Do we have a group photo? Yes, so which way do we pose? Which way do we pose? Do we just go in there? Okay. Architect Chong, maybe you can just go into the crowd. We'll just have a group photo. Okay. So for those who are still in the hall, perhaps you